So the other thing I wanted to talk about was this thing called acids and bases. We've probably heard of acids and bases, and we know some things like acid burns and things like that. But what are acids and what are bases, and what makes something a stronger acid than a stronger base? And, sometimes you hear the word neutral too. So let's talk about what those are. So it turns out that a solution has hydrogen ions and OH ions in it. And if they're balanced, equal numbers of H's and OH's in the solution, we call that neutral, meaning that it's a pH of 7. So if we look at the next slide, an acid is basically a quick definition. An acid is a substance that donates hydrogen ions, so it has a bunch of hydrogen ions in the solution. A base is a substance that has a bunch of OH ions in the solution. And when we look at them, an acid solution has more hydrogen bonds than OHs. A basic solution has more OH ions than hydrogens, and neutral means equal amounts of H's and OH's. So our blood is close to neutral, our saliva is close to neutral. If we think of something that's acidic, is going to be something like our stomach acid. Bases, you're probably thinking of stuff like bleach or something like that. Well, and those are extreme ones, but we'll talk about a couple in a minute. We do have a thing called a pH scale, and a pH scale, the P is always small, the H is the capital letter one because it's talking about hydrogen ions. So the scale is telling us how acidic or basic a solution is. And sometimes you hear the word buffer. Our blood is like a buffer. And basically what it does, it's solution that resists pH changes. So you can throw in some hydrogen ions and they'll stay kind of relatively to the same pH. You can throw in some OH ions and they'll stay relatively to that same pH. And it's just got the ability to resist some of these pH changes because it can mop up those hydrogen ions or OH ions and sort of stay in a normal range. An example would be sodium bicarbonate, baking soda as a buffer, carbonic acid, if you've ever used it in the hospital or in the labs, it's the same thing. If we look at the pH scale, so it goes from basically 1 to 14, and 7 is neutral. 7 means the equal amount of OHs and hydrogen ions. So things that are going to be 7 are going to be things like water, human blood, tears, saliva, things like that. If we start to add some more hydrogen ions to something, we're going to go slightly more acidic. So like if you look at urine is around 6. And the reason why our body adds a little more hydrogen ions to urine is because we want to kill off bacteria. So they don't like that lower pH range, and by making urine slightly acidic, it kills them, and then we don't get tons of UTIs. If we keep going on the acidic range, we see that tomato juice is acidic. We knew some things like sodas are a pH of about 3. So to give you an idea, a soda is about a pH of 3. Lemon juice or your stomach juice is about a pH of 2. It does it for the same exact reason. When you eat things like bacteria or parasite or fungus, we don't want those in our small intestines. So by putting them in a pH of 2, it kills them and helps break things down. And then it's very close to battery acid. So if you look at these beakers, neutral was equal amounts of H ions and OH ions, pretty much equal ranges. That's going to be neutral. With the acidic, look how we only have a couple of OH ions, but a ton of hydrogen ions. And the closer you get to 1, the more H's we'll have and the less OH's we have. If we looked at something like urine, maybe 1 of these OH's would be missing, maybe 2, but that's about it. Where here you can see that majority of them are missing. It's not as equal. If we go the other way, you could see that stuff like, milk of magnesia. When do you take it? Milk of magnesia, you could see, is a base. you take it when you have stomach issues, and what you're doing is your stomach acid is too low. And by throwing in milk of magnesia, it actually brings the pH back up and makes you feel better because it's getting lower and lower and lower because you've eaten something that you don't agree with, you're producing too much gastric juice. So by adding milk of magnesia to your stomach, you're bringing that pH back up a little bit and you start feeling better. Things that you probably, hopefully, will never drink are household ammonia. You can see that it's more basic. Bleach, oven cleaner, things like that, they're on this end of the pH scale. And if you look here, you can see that we have tons of OHs and very little H's. So here on the other scale, we have a ton of hydrogens and very little OHs. Neutral is about 50-50, and then basis is more OHs and very little H's. If we look at acids and bases, you could see that it's basically a mixture of the H's and OH's that dictate if it's an acid, base, or neutral. Here are the key concepts that you probably should learn. We have those in your pages that you need to study for this class. Great.